They're dead, Dave.
What, Captain Hollister?
Everybody's dead, Dave.
What, Todd Hunter? What, Selby? Not Jen.
He's dead, Dave. Everybody is dead. Everybody is dead, Dave.
Hello, welcome back to Everybody is Dead, Dave, the Red Dwarf review podcast with myself, Phil Hawkins.
And me, Adam Martyn.
We are here. We're fully into Series 2 now of Red Dwarf in our journey through every episode. If you haven't watched or listened to this podcast before, I am someone who has been watching since the 90s. Adam is fresh to this.
Yes.
Hasn't watched them before this watch through.
First timer. I know. Hand in my nerd card right away.
And I'm wearing, you won't be able to see this because we have no video on this, but I'm currently wearing an Everybody is Dead Dave t-shirt.
Very apt. Very timely.
Apt, very on brand.
Oh, yes, of course.
Hey, we're now on more platforms. I mean, by the time this comes out, we'll have been on more platforms for a few months because we record these so far in advance. But we're now on Apple Podcasts. We're now on Google Podcasts. We're now on a load of other podcast services I've never heard of. So, and Spotify, as well as being on my YouTube channel. So, yeah, you can find us pretty much everywhere you get your podcasts from.
Yeah, we're practically everywhere. You can't avoid us now. There's no excuse. We are everywhere.
There's no excuse not to listen and or watch this podcast. In fact, why don't you, just stick it on in the background on every available service. Once you've finished listening through to it on Spotify, just go listen to it on Apple as well. Why not?
Yeah.
And give us a like on
neither of
everyone.
us work in advertising.
We're talking about Stasis leak this week.
We are.
That's the episode title. Timey-wimey stuff.
Very timey-wimey, yeah.
Love it. As Doctor Who fans, we love a bit of timey-wimey.
Yeah, good job I had my head screwed on for it. But the first point I wanted to bring up, at the very beginning, Holly, the ship's computer, of course, does a recap of, who's on the ship and then a bit of additional information, like about what's going on. And he mentions in this case that they found a moon that is in the shape of Felicity Kendall's bottom. My question is, who is Felicity Kendall?
I don't know. The name kind of vaguely rings a bell.
Right.
I don't know if I'm guessing somebody who was famous in the late 80s. That is the problem with having a show that runs so long, I suppose, that, the references, the cultural references do date a little sometimes.
Yeah, it's just, that was my assumption. I thought, I'm guessing this is someone of the era, but it did make me quite. It's like, I think in the last episode we talked about the vacuum thing. I can't remember. It was the something in vac.
Shake and vac.
That's it, shake and vac, and then. But sometimes it depends how long lasting they are, isn't it? Pop culture wise, I think we also said a few episodes ago. In the Crichton episode, there was the Neighbours reference, which, of course, Neighbours is probably a bit more long-lasting for what it is. So I was like, oh, yeah, that's the Neighbours reference.
Yeah.
So,
well, I've just Googled her, Felicity Kendall, and according to Wikipedia, Felicity Kendall, CBE, is an English actress working principally in television and theatre. She has appeared in numerous stage and screen roles over more than a 50-plus year career. But the role that brought her to attention to the world at large was that of Barbara Good in the 1975 television series The Good Life.
See, I've heard of The Good Life, but I wouldn't have been able to point her out and say, that's Felicity Kendall. So, sorry, Felicity.
Presumably, according to the boys from The Dwarf, at least, she has a pleasant-shaped bottom because...
supposedly so.
Supposedly, yes. According to Holly, anyway, because there's a moon that's shaped like it, and they went around it more than once.
More than once, yeah. I'm glad they ended the joke there. I was like, okay, joke's over.
Yeah, I was slightly worried where that one was going to go.
Yeah, exactly. But I guess unlike a lot of Red Dwarf, we start with the episode proper with a flashback sequence presented in some lovely black and white, which I admire that. I admire that choice.
Yeah, I was wondering, because we've had flashback sequences before and they've never done this sort of stylized black and white thing. I don't know whether or not it was needed, really. I kind of get what they were going for, but I don't know. What did you think?
For some reason, I thought at first because it flashes up with that caption as well, doesn't it? The 3 million years ago in bright red, and I thought maybe, other black and white. Oh, it's funny. It's like so long ago, so let's put it in black and white. But I thought it may have been one of those instances where very quickly it then fades into color, like for any Doctor Who fans. In the Two Doctors when that starts, how it's black and white for a few seconds with the second Doctor and Jamie, and then it fades into color. I thought maybe it'd do something similar, but no, I'm surprised they kept it for the whole sequence. And I love black and white in general. Like, I think black and white can look really good. I don't think though some of the Red Dwarf sets are suited to black, because obviously it's made to be in color. So I think, and because of a lot of it's grey, as we talked about, the set is inherently grey. And then when you're working in grey scales and monochrome, it just makes everything feel more grey. So I admire the choice. Didn't it? Yeah, I admire the choice, but maybe I think I would have preferred, like I say, a fade. Start with black and white whilst the caption's up, and then fade back into colour.
Yeah. And we get Captain Hollister again. Nice to see him.
Yeah.
I like a bit of Captain Hollister. He's a funny man.
It's nice seeing different members of the crew pop up, and we'll mention it a bit later on, but we see a few more than the captain. But yeah, it was nice to see him pop up at the beginning, and in that flashback sequence that we see a few times, that effect where Dead Rimmer pops his head through the table for 1988, that was a pretty decent effect, I thought.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's probably the best they've gotten for stuff going through Rimmer. Because they've done several things where people walk through Rimmer, various things. And I think this is probably the best it's looked so far.
Yeah, even in... obviously, we see it in black and white first. And I must say, I think the effect actually works better in black and white. Because obviously, with the techniques back then, you could maybe see some fringing around the ends. But in black and white, you don't really see it. Whereas when you see it later in colour, it's not even that bad. But you still see it a tiny little bit. But... again, for the time and the effect, and it's very smooth as well. It's not like his head just appears. It glides through the table, and I think it's a very seamless effect. Yeah.
And this flashback scene is back when all the crew was alive, and the Rimmer has reported Lister for insubordination or something like that. I can't remember. No, that was it. He'd given him some magic mushrooms, basically, hadn't he? Given him some magic mushrooms and caused him to have hallucinations. And it ends up with Rimmer being annoyed that the captain only gave him 2 weeks' duty of painting the ship, and he ends up insulting the captain.
With respect, sir, you've got your head right up your big fat ass.
And sticking a pencil up his nose and getting even more time than Lister got. So that was amusing. But also, I like the fact that they're bringing in the painting of the ship, because we see that at the beginning of every episode. Yeah. Lister on the outside of the ship. It's part of the opening sequence. He's painting the ship. Now we get to see this. That's what it was. He was painting the ship.
It's like you've said in previous episodes, where they'll take little things like that are just said, and then they build on it. Like you said, with lines that appear once, but then they build on them. So yeah, it's another nice bit of Red Dwarf continuity working its way there. I can
kind of just imagine the two writers just sitting in the pub or something, and them just realizing, you know what, Dave's meant to be a technician that fixes food machines, but we've got him in the opening sequence painting this ship. We need to explain that somehow.
And sure enough, season 2, episode 4, there's your explanation. Just so seamless. But the crew pretty soon, or the remaining crew in the present, discovered there is a stasis leak aboard the ship, which at first, when I hear the term, I'm like, what on earth can this mean? But as you said at the beginning, it's basically a bit of wibbly wobbly timey wimey action going on, isn't it?
It's a doorway through time.
As the cat says, it's a magic door.
It's a magic door. I'm going to go to that joke now, because the whole cat going,
what is it? It's a rent in the space-time continuum. What is it?
A stasis room freezes time, it makes time stand still. So whenever you have a leak, it must preserve whatever it's leaked into, and it's leaked into this room.
What is it? It's a singularity, a point in the universe where the normal laws of space and time don't apply. What is it?
Time into the past. Oh, a magic door. Well, why didn't you say?
It went on too long, and I didn't find it funny at all.
Yeah.
I mean,
No,
the
I
end line of
absolutely
it being
agree.
a magic door, and him going, "Oh, why didn't you just say so?" That bit was a little bit funny, but all the rest of it, I just did not find that joke funny.
Yeah, no, I agree. It went on too long, and you've actually brought nicely onto one of my next notes, which was like Danny John Jules. I do love him, like I love his energy, but some of those jokes he's being written, especially in this episode, that a lot of them did not land for me whatsoever. Like especially in the first half of the episode, before we actually get into any of the Stasis leak stuff, before they cross over, like just what some of the one-liners or the quips, I don't know, they just didn't do it for me. Like the one that stood out, I think, was in the when they first talk about it, and Kat's like, he's like knitting or fixing one of his shirts or whatever on the top bunk, and Lister and Rimmer are arguing, and Kat's like,
"There's a wise old cat saying, which I think applies in this situation. It goes, what are you talking about, dog breath?"
and I was just like, did that need the pre-bit? I don't know. I think it's not on Danny, because obviously it's the stuff he's being given. I just think a lot of the jokes in this episode for Kat just didn't work for me at all.
I think a lot of time with Kat in these early seasons, they're just really trying to find anything for him to do, because he doesn't really have much purpose on the ship. He's kind of he just follows them around and says some lines every now and again and does an occasional cat thing at the moment. And again, like you said, that's nothing on the actor, but that is purely how it's written. And I think from memory he does get better, and he does end up doing more than that. But I'm now doubting myself in thinking that. I don't know. I can't remember. We'll have to see as we get further on.
There is one Cat moment that I did really enjoy, and actually is probably, which I'll save near the end, my contender for funniest moment of the episode, which is ironic considering I was just like, oh, the jokes don't work. But there was one in particular that was like, that was a well-timed joke. It caught me by surprise, and I liked it. So I'll save that to the end. But yeah, on the whole, though, a lot of the comedy just didn't land for me with Kat. So
yeah, and we pretty quickly find out we're in a time. I mean, we kind of got from holographic Rimmer's head popping up from the table in the flashback that we're in probably a time travel story. In fact, there's a little bit earlier than that where he kind of goes past him in the corridor and he's covering up his face, so you don't actually see it's Rimmer, but you can hear it's Rimmer's voice. Yeah, and he just goes, "Excuse me." So right then I was like, time travel, excellent. I'm going to enjoy this, because I do love a timey-wimey story. And then there's this photo of Kochanski, say the name right, of her and seemingly Dave getting married that Dave finds.
Yeah, which he holds on to. And they discover a way where potentially they could bring someone from the past, or save someone from the past to lead into the future, because there's a spare stasis pod on board.
And then of course we've got the Rimmer, of course, wants to bring himself forward.
Of course.
Did he learn nothing from the last time there were two Rimmers? Come on, me too. That episode.
I did think that. Like, you know, and he's like, oh, one dead me, one living me. The Sunday Best joke made me chuckle, but I did think back to that series 1 finale and thought, hang on, like, this clearly, I know it was two dead Rimmers then, but I was like, still, clearly this didn't work last time. What makes you think it's gonna? It was pretty overshadowed, but you know, they didn't make a big thing of it, which I guess is fine, and the concept works because it creates that dynamic of argument between, you know, Rimmer and Lister. But yeah, there was that brief moment when he said it, like you just said. I was like, hang on, like we've done this. So I thought it would have made more sense maybe because, you know, in the beginning of in the flashback we see Lister reading his diary and about that woman that he really fancies. I thought maybe it would have made more sense if it was like a battle of the women they wanted back. Like if Rimmer wanted the woman he wrote in his diary and Lister wanted Kochanski. I don't know. I thought that might have been a bit more of an interesting.
I was slightly disappointed that the woman that he wrote about in his diary wasn't McGruger.
Yeah, because what was the? Can you remember the name?
I know it wasn't the name, but
I know it wasn't McGruger because I thought, well, that's not the person we saw in an earlier episode.
Because McGruger is basically sort of Rimmer's Kochanski, the one
Yeah.
that keeps on getting brought up throughout the series as somebody that he's, had a romantic liaison with. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I was just surprised. Oh, who's this other person he's referring to? What I kind of feel affronted on McGruger's behalf.
Yeah, no, I think that would have been good, like McGruger and Kochanski being the two at stakes. I think it would have given those two, like Rimmer and Lister, more stakes for them, and could really put like their friendship to the test in a funny way, if you want to go down that route. But I think it would have been a more interesting fight than just Rimmer being like, "I'm going to bring back myself," So
Yeah.
yeah.
Talking of friendships and things, there was we didn't get anything. Occasionally we get a really touching moment between the two of them or something like that, but we didn't get anything like that went quite that far this time. But it did sort of skirt on it when they were having a discussion about sort of moving on and leaving friends behind. You don't stay friends with the same people forever and stuff. And that I recognize that from my own life. Various stages in my life, from school and stuff, I've only kept in touch with one or two friends from school, and each stage of my life I tend to have a group of friends while I'm in that stage, and then maybe keep in contact with one or two of them after it. So it kind of touched a familiar sort of spot there.
No, I agree. It was in a way like one of those more tender moments, but more played, I think, in this case for the comedy aspect rather than like the more the serious aspect. But I do think when I was hearing them talking, like you said, you get what they're saying, and it's true. Like even I've had it as well. It's very true. You don't stay friends with everyone. But I think they played it for comedy because you see, Phil, we're not on the space deck, the observation deck.
No.
That's where you go to have the proper heart-to-heart moments. But because they're in the bunk, we gotta do the comedy. But
gotta do some comedy and some self-deprecating humor in there.
Absolutely. Had they have done that on the space deck, it would have been completely heart-to-heart. But yeah, that's my theory. Space deck is where they go for those moments where we just need to calm down and have a nice little chat.
A bonding moments between Lister and Rimmer.
They're both pretty set on doing it. They're going to basically fight each other to get there first. And when Lister goes with the cat, on friendships, we do see one of his old friends.
Peterson!
Yes, played by Mark Williams, who anyone who likes the Harry Potter stuff is Arthur Weasley, a very young Arthur Weasley. And he's great, isn't he? Even in that small little role he's got in this episode.
Maybe 2 minutes, less than that maybe, even on screen, and he's brilliant in that scene.
Yeah, he's just playing it up for laughs, and he's good. I think it's something he does well in both Harry Potter and his appearance in Doctor Who as well. He can do sort of quick comedy, but he never overplays it. Do you know what I mean? It's just the right amount. Like one of the funniest moments was when he just goes, he's talking to those two women, and he just comes out with, "I'm very good in bed," out of nowhere. And it's just, but the way he delivers it, he's just very deadpan, almost like Holly in a way, very deadpan about it. And it's so left field, but he pulls it off.
Was Peterson pretending to be foreign?
I thought
he was putting on a slightly weird accent.
Felicitations, beautiful ladies. Back from Planet Lee? Let me take those heavy cases. My name is Olaf Peterson. I am very good in bed.
Yeah, and only for one or two lines with Lister did he come out of it. But even when he walked away, he was like, "Lister, I'm going to kill you for this." It was an odd. It's implying that. I don't know what it was.
I don't know. Maybe he was just trying to sound exotic for the ladies to appeal to them, and that was his technique for hitting on them to sound mysterious.
His character's definitely English, isn't it? Because we see that in the very first episode. He's yeah. But no, it was nice. It was nice to see, and it's nice that so far anyway. I don't know about as the series goes on, that for these reprisal roles, they've managed to get the same actors so far. Mark Williams come back as Peterson. I believe it's been the same actors for, the captain and Kochanski as well. So it's just that nice little bit of continuity. And it'll be interesting to see how long that sticks. I know it doesn't stick with Crichton, as we've touched upon before. But I'll be curious just to see how long those, the side characters, if you like, how long they stay as the same actors, I guess. Yeah,
I've mentioned this on the podcast before, so it's not going to be spoiling it for you because I've already mentioned it, but Kochanski comes back and actually is a main character at some point, but played by a different actress. And I'm now going to be keeping an eye on, like, I'm curious about when the last time this actress appears and how big the gap is between the last time she appears here as this actress and then, because this, for all we know, this might be the last time we see her until she pops up in several years' time as a different actress. And that will probably feel better. I mean, it'll feel weird if they have her 1 year and then the very next year it's played by a different actress. That kind of gap would make it feel better.
Yeah. No, I think so. It'd be good to sort of chronicle the gap between it all, really, all these little like tidbit moments, and see how well they're kept in check. One thing I must admit that made me chuckle, when Lister does inquire about where Kochanski is, she's off planet at the Galloway Holiday Inn, and when you see the plaque, and it's clearly just the Holiday Inn plaque, and they've slapped the word like Galloway on it, and they clearly needed to save some money. They went to Holiday Inn and said, "Hey, can we just film here, put some sets, put some characters walking around," and But I think again that's part of the charm, isn't it? They're not being shy about it. They're like, we definitely just got a Holiday Inn, and we're just putting our characters in it. But yeah, it made me chuckle.
Yeah, when they go back in time again, they take Holly with them in the form of a watch.
Yes,
this was
Apple
the
Watch
1980s. Predicting smartwatches. I tell you what, I would absolutely prefer to have Holly on my Apple Watch than Siri.
Do you know what? Someone would probably develop like a program where it is like a version
just imagine if you could get Norman Lovett's voice doing all
just
of
to respond
the Siri
to you.
stuff.
That'd be brilliant.
He would
Devs,
make a
if any
fortune.
devs are listening, come on. Let's
Norman
make that
Lovett,
happen.
if you're listening, go approach somebody about that. I will download you onto my Apple Watch so that we can hear your voice as Holly wherever we are.
No, it was, and again, a neat effect. Simple, but again, very smooth, very well done. Didn't see any like fringing or anything like that. So, yeah, neat little effect.
Yeah, they've really, because Holly was very pixelated in the first few episodes of the first series, and so they were putting a kind of a digitalized effect on him, which didn't quite work. But now I think they've got into what they need to do for making Holly look good, I think.
It's because they're not using Sony CRTs anymore, you see.
Yeah.
They've clearly upgraded from Series 1.
The brand deal fell through.
Yeah. But we, as Lister and Kat go through the hotel, we find out, or Dave believes that she actually married someone else, the other man in the picture. And he goes on this little rant about like those kind of people, or as he says, total smegheads. But I did wonder in his description of the whole, oh yes, I'll have wine with my cornflakes and all that rant he gives. Part of me was like, because the late 80s was a time of, from what I've read in history and stuff, and from talking with my parents who lived it, it was very much greed was king. In society, it was like the rich were really rich. Yeah, you were out to get rich, and you would like cut anyone off to get a bit more money. And part of me thought, was this like a very not subtle, but was it sort of an attack maybe on that sort of upper class? Those people who go around wine with their cornflakes, all that sort of... Because he assumes the other person in that photo is like that, I think. Well, that's what I took from it.
Yeah, I think Lister as a character is somebody who feels like he might have... and I don't say this in a negative way, but a kind of like working class chip on his shoulder type thing. But not in the sense that it's not necessarily justified. It might be completely justified. But he kind of feels like, so he has that opinion of probably everyone that is sort of that sort of...
Yeah. He probably thinks it about Rimmer to some degree.
Yeah,
I'd argue.
I'm sure he does.
Yeah.
And
because I think we said before, they both sort of... Yeah.
Knowing Rimmer, that's probably reinforced it slightly as well, because Rimmer is a complete douche.
Absolutely. And I think, because we've said before, how I sort of took the characters when we first met them, Rimmer and Lister. Lister to me speaks to that, very much working class lad, and Rimmer is the very uptight upper class lad. And again, no disrespect to either, but that almost seemed like the dynamic. It's the two sides of the extreme. So I just thought Lister's rant in this case, that's what it said to me anyway. I don't know if it was the intention, but that's immediately what I got from it when he was doing it. And I thought
it's pretty much what I thought
could have been
too.
quite.
I think I took the wine on the cornflakes to be a sort of mirror of what I assume Lister does, which is put beer on his cornflakes.
Yeah. Which is I mean, I don't think I'd do that, but
No,
it's,
I wouldn't. I wouldn't put either on cornflakes, but I kind of I imagine Lister probably would put beer on his cornflakes. So he probably therefore assumes that posh people put wine on their cornflakes. And
we get I think that comes after, but Kochanski does emerge from the hotel room, ushers them in, and we learn that the man she married was in fact Dave, a very a bearded
from the future.
Dave from the future, and it's interesting because from here on out they set up, is it like you have to go back and in 5 years there'll be another opportunity? And now and when I watched it, based on what you've said, Phil, I'm like, so in 5 seasons are we gonna? Is that new opportunity gonna? It'll be very interesting to see if this particular thread, if they keep to their word basically, and at some point in the future they catch up on that. I'd be very interested. My money would be
I'm not going to spoil that for you,
but,
because and that's one of the great things about the show is you never know, because some of the threads they create like this that you think, they could do something with that, or they're setting up something that will happen in the future. Some of them they never go back to, and some of them they absolutely do. So which ones are which?
Yeah.
You're on the edge of your seat waiting to find out.
And while that's going on, Dead Lister's trying to convince his old self what to do, but because his old self's on the equivalent of magic mushrooms, he of course thinks he's hallucinating and has quite the go off at the captain.
I love it when the captain came in a big, massive, like fancy dress chicken costume, because they'd set that up early in the episode, because somebody had walked past and had a look at a sign saying fancy dress party tonight, so they'd sort of set it up, and then he walks in, and of course he thinks it's a hallucination, because why would a big giant chicken that's talking like the captain be in your room? And the captain's trying to apologize, and then he gets kneed in the groin by Rimmer,
and had a lot of green stuff chucked at him as well. Yeah, no, it was a good timing. Just shows how, as he always is, how good Chris Barry is with that sort of partly physical, but also the delivery of his lines as well. It was just a really funny scene. Not my favourite, not my funniest moment, but definitely a funny scene. But back after the hotel, Holly gives Dave a chat about, it's better to have loved than to be. Whatever that phrase is, I never remember it. But that phrase, you all know it, the famous phrase.
But it's better to have loved and lost than to have never loved at all, is the actual phrase.
Yeah.
Not what he says.
No, I know. I was like, he's changed it slightly. And Dave says, has that ever happened to you, Hole? And he says, yes, with a ZX81 Spectrum.
Yes.
Which, for those who don't know, was a very old computer back in the day. Which, what did he say? It was...
She's cheap, she's stupid. And she wouldn't load. Well, not for me, anyway.
Yeah, so he changes. It's better to have loved and lost than.
What I'm saying, Dave, is that it's better to have loved and to have lost than to listen to an album by Olivia Newton-John.
Why's that?
Anything's better than listening to an album by Olivia Newton-John.
Because apparently nothing's worse than listening to Olivia Newton-John. I think it's very harsh on Olivia Newton-John.
Yeah, I mean, I've listened to her Greatest Hits album before, and. It's got the hits. I just think the ones that are also on there, the ones you don't know, not one that isn't Grease or Physical, they're just a bit like, It's more like a bit dull, if anything. But yeah, funny how they picked Olivia Newton-John.
Guessing she was probably of the moment.
Probably at that time, yeah. And, I mean, for me, the last scene where it all kicks off, I mean... I was like, what on earth is going on? Because it just keeps coming and coming and coming. Rimmer gets brought back to his bunk. He's wearing a shower cap and a surgical gown. He's been sedated. He's like, it's all over now. And then dead Rimmer pops up. And then, of course, Lister and Kat come in, and then revelation of at first future Dave comes in randomly with Kochanski. They never explain why he's there, but he just appears, and then future Rimmer with a thin little mustache.
Yeah, so we get 3 Rimmers, 3 Listers all in the same room. Although one of the Listers is asleep on the bed. The one from the timeline they're in is asleep on the bed. Talking of timelines, I'm wondering like how the time travel works in this, because have they changed the past? Is this what always happened? Because it's implied it's what's always happened, because Dave finds the stuff in what makes him learn about it in the first place is he finds it, a reference to it in Rimmer's diary. So it's always happened, which means that when in that very first episode we saw Dave attempt to flirt with Kochanski up in the drive room when he was about to go and get disciplined and sent into stasis by the captain, by that point she'd already married him, but he didn't know.
Yeah, I mean,
and so she was probably of course the writers didn't have this in mind when they were writing that scene.
No,
but looking back on it and looking back on the way she's quite flirty with him, having in another episode mentioning that after this Dave mentions he barely spoken to her before and he'd always wanted to but never spoke to her. So it kind of makes sense that actually that's why she's so flirty with him there, because even though she's not spoken to him from that time much before, she has married the future him.
Oh, it's making my head spin.
It makes your head spin, but actually it fits really nicely.
Yeah, I mean, I think we know, when it comes to time travel in any show, you've always got to be very careful about how you do it. But I think Red Dwarf could even get away with it to some degree by the nature, that it is a comedy. So think I'm sure if this was a proper drama, you'd be analysing it being like, oh, does that link? But I must admit, the whole time I didn't actually think about what the time travel rules were in this world, because I was just so absorbed in like the situation and the comedy of it all. Do you know what I mean? Whereas maybe something with like Doctor Who, I'd be like, hang on, does this time travel work, or in any other drama? I
was only thinking of it because of that one scene that I remembered in the drive room from that very first episode, and I thought, how does that work with this? That works actually really well, and it makes it make so much sense.
Nice when things make sense.
Yeah, and I'm sure it was a complete accident, but it's probably nice that it fits. The only other thing I had down on my notes that I was going to mention is the lift scene, because they go down in the lift to floor 16, but to get there they have to go down 2,567 floors, which, for starters, there's not... You often when you're watching the show, I find you forget how big this ship is meant to be, because they're always in the same couple of rooms. They're always either in the drive room or in their quarters or whatever, or in a corridor. You don't get to see much of the ship, and you kind of forget how big it is. Even when you get the exterior shots, there's nothing to really compare it to get the scale. So this was a nice moment that reminded you this ship is freaking huge.
Yeah, and I think the shot just after they go down in the lift, how they use the shots of the model ship to, do scene transitions. I think they placed one great, after the lift, just to show like, look, this ship is humongous. And we've said before, the model work in the show, particularly on the Red Dwarf ship, is, so intricate and so detailed. Like, of course they're going to do model shots of it. They want to be like, look at this ship, look at the scale of it. So yeah, it really played to that strength, I think, that scene.
And it's so big and it takes so long to go down these 2,567 floors that going on an elevator is like going on an airplane. You get an air stewardess sort of on a video screen giving you a little talk about safety.
Welcome to Express Lift's descent to floor 16. We will be going down 2,567 floors, and for a small extra charge, you can enjoy the in-lift movie, Gone with the Wind. If you look to your right and to your left, you will notice there are no exits. In the highly unlikely event of the lift having to make a crash landing, death is certain.
You get nice comfy seats. It's implied by Kat that you get an in-flight meal during your journey down.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I quite like that. It was nice.
Yeah, it was cute. Very cute little scene. There's some dark humor as well with the cyanide pills. That was always fun. But
Yes.
and she does a rather unconvincing fall. You can sort of see her like preparing to do a very safe landing. I don't know. I saw it. I was like, don't know if I believe that fall, but you know, that's me being very nitpicky and cynical there. But what was your funniest moment, Phil?
Oh God, what was my funniest moment? There was a collection of like just individual lines which I found funny. Like when near the very start he's talking about, oh, so you've read my diary. Lister has been reading Rimmer's diary. Rimmer then says something about Lister's diary, and he says, oh, so you have been reading my diary. Lister says this to Rimmer, and Rimmer goes, yes, but at least I had the common decency to do it sneakily behind your back, which I chuckled at. I don't know if it was necessarily my funniest moment. There wasn't necessarily one major moment in this that stood out, but there was just lots of really little things like that, little lines here and there. Holly was good as well. Being in the watch and stuff every time.
Yeah.
Every time Lister put, his hand in his trousers or something, there were some comments about or under his armpit. He's like references it being like a jungle under there and stuff. Yeah. Little moments like that. What about yourself? Have you got is there a moment that really stood out to you?
Well, I had one that at first I was like, yeah, that would be it. And it was the thing I mentioned earlier with Kat, when they go to the Holiday Inn and he sees the woman with like dog fur wrapped around her neck. And he just goes off at it. And I think it's because it was so unexpected and just how much he goes off on it. It just really made me laugh because you could tell, for something like that, he needed to go at that with everything he's got. And he absolutely does. But then there was one moment near the very end that trumped it for me. And I believe it's I can't remember if it was, maybe it was before or after. I think it was near the end, where we see dead Rimmer approach his past self. And again, it's Chris Barry's delivery. He goes, in 3 million years, you'll be dead. And he goes, will I really?
Yes.
Yeah, and I don't know why. I think it's just the look on his face and the sarcasm behind it was so strong, and it just made me. So that was my funniest moment.
Actually, that whole scene. Actually, Rimmer slightly off his tits on drugs that he's been given.
Yeah,
and being like, "Oh yeah, he's gonna save anyone." Really? Yeah.
Yeah. That line absolutely clinched the funniest moment for me. I was like, "Good job, Kat. You got one good joke in for me, but I'm afraid Rimmer's upstaged you there, right near the very end." But
what about favorite character?
Do you know what? I'm going to give it to Peterson, just because, like we said, it is always nice to see Mark Williams, and like you said, for the 2 minutes he's on, he made me smile, he made me laugh by doing very simple or weird things, and yeah, it was just nice to see him. So I'll give it to Peterson. Why not?
Nice. Why not? Let's make it a guest star double bill on the favorite character then, because I'm going to give mine to Captain Hollister, nice. And. It's mainly for the chicken scene, I gotta be honest. I love Captain Hollister, even when he's just being like the captain. But when he came in the chicken suit and that whole scene, that was great. Actually, maybe that's my funniest scene. That's my funniest moment and my favourite character, Captain Hollister in the chicken costume.
Good choices all around, I think. But what about a rating, Phil? Out of 10, what are you thinking?
Oh, I've gone back and forth on this because I do really like it. I like the plot, and I love a timey-wimey plot, and this is a great timey-wimey plot. But it does have a couple of, some of the usual criticisms, slightly Cat being underused. Some of the jokes don't quite land. So it's not perfect. I don't know. I might give it a 8. 8 out of 10. 8 out of 10 scutters. 8 scutters.
Nice. I think I'm afraid I'm going to go one lower than you. I'm going to give it a 7. The moments that made me laugh, like I mentioned, really did make me laugh. But sadly, I think in this episode, they were a bit few and far between. I think, like I said, with Kat, but also with the regulars as well. I think a lot of the jokes in this episode, for one reason or another, just didn't land with me, for whatever reason that might be. Which is fine. Comedy is subjective. But yeah, it just didn't work for me this time. Again, like we said, Cat being underused, some of the timey-wimey stuff. For me, only at times moving a bit too fast. Not saying I'm unintelligent, but just like I was like, whoa, hang on, let's have a minute. But I know they're only working with a half an hour format. And also the very ending, Rimmer just screaming "Go away" to everyone. It was kind of a underwhelming end, I thought.
It's another one of those blunt Red Dwarf endings that just it just ends suddenly, and they do this a lot.
Yeah, and I mean, I just think it could have been replaced with another one-liner that was funnier. Like, because he does that whole, he's like, right, I'm going to make a speech. From that alone, you know he's going to go off, like, just the way, with everything going on. I just think him screaming "Go away" just didn't really, it didn't justify that build, I think. Especially with all the insanity building, you know, all these different Rimmers and Listers appearing, and all you're going to say is "Go away." And I know it's because he's been on the drugs and stuff, but I don't know. I think I just would have preferred a different line for the ending. Keep the structure of the ending, but just say something else. But yeah, I'd give it a solid 7, though. Still a fun episode. I had a fun time, but yeah, definitely not the best of what we've seen so far, in my opinion.
Fair enough. Well, that's Stasis Leak. What did you think of it? If you are on YouTube, if you're watching this on YouTube, let us know in the comments below. And while you're there, do all the YouTube things. You know, hit the like button, hit the bell button, and all that sort of stuff. That's mostly where you can find me on the internet, is my YouTube channel. If you happen to be listening to this on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or anything, then do check out my YouTube channel. It's Philip Hawkins, just my name. And I talk about Doctor Who and other stuff a lot. I'm not the only one with a YouTube channel, though, Adam, am I? What do you talk about?
Sort of similar to yourself, a variety of pop culture, Doctor Who as well, but also things like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. Now that's what I call music. A lot of classic TV as well, TV history, presentation level, that sort of stuff. Just a bit of everything, really. If you have a look, I'm sure you'll find something you like. Just type in Adam Martyn on YouTube. That's Martyn with a Y. And I should pop up. So yeah, again, like with Phil's channel, do all the usual stuff. Subscribe, check out some stuff. Let me know what you think. And yeah, I hope we hope you enjoyed this episode as well.
And anything else we need to say? I always forget what I need to do at the end of podcasts.
I think we covered it. We did the usual self-promo.
Oh, and of course I should mention the lovely people that have contributed to our opening sequence. Sophie, who did the illustration. Stephen Kingsbury, who did the music, and George Sheard, who did the put it all together into the wonderful opening sequence we've got that you will have only seen if you're watching this on YouTube.
Which you should as well. Even if you've just listened on audio, go and check out the YouTube version for the illustrations.
Yeah, those three.
Put some while you're doing the ironing.
Some hard work. Brilliant. Well, we'll see you next time. Goodbye.
We shall. Bye.